It is Wednesday, 5th of February, 2025. Welcome to the God 14 video. This one is going to be a random collection of thoughts and reflections based on themes that have cropped up in the previous volumes in this series. Going to be reading a lot from the screen because there's going to be a lot of feedback from people that have gained some value, it seems, from this series. And it's interesting because I started this just over a year ago. And whereas back then I was getting branded a heathen and I was getting lots of hateful messages and being told that I was going to burn in hell and stuff like this for my heresy, it's interesting because as the months have progressed, the feedback I've been getting has been way more supportive, and the general theme of it is that a whole load of people are down with many of the ideas that I'm putting across. It seems that this stuff is really gaining in popularity and it's really starting to resonate with a lot of people. So almost all of what I receive now is supportive, and it's from people saying that I'm articulating ideas that have been on their mind for some time and really making sense of quite a difficult and complex subject area, but nevertheless an absolute vital one to get on top of if we really want to get to the root of truth and ultimate spiritual freedom. So, an overriding question which has cropped up throughout this series, and which I've asked all of my guests that have come on for conversations of this nature, is one that's been bugging me big time. And I'm still looking for an adequate answer to it. I have received answers, they've just not been adequate. They've not been convincing. They've not been plausible for me. So the question, which eclipses all others, is if we accept that this realm of existence was put into place by an entity or a force which did not have our best interests at heart, if we accept that this place was set up to cultivate fear, pain, and suffering, as I contend it was, and people can put all kinds of different interpretations on that. Probably the easiest way to express it is through the Gnostic viewpoint of there being a demiurge, this lesser god or would be god, this entity which somehow found a way of creating this apparent 3D physical world and presumably trapping or coercing or using other means of getting us divine sparks, units of infinite consciousness, to come in human form and undergo all the experiences that we do. And if we're really honest about it, and if we take a look at the world generally and everything that's going on, we would have to conclude that there's way more fear, pain, suffering, trauma than there is genuine, lasting joy, happiness, love, abundance, and all that good stuff. So, that being the case, if we also accept that there is an original God of creation, so the force that set everything into being, the generative force that allowed there to be a demiurge and other entities, demonic or otherwise, that allowed there to be anything other than a complete void of nothingness, the question in my mind becomes, where was this force, this good God, if we can assume it's good, when this place was being created and when we were being forced, coerced, tricked, or otherwise persuaded to come in here? Because I don't accept personally that I ever consented on a soul level to come in. And many other people have told me they feel the same way about their own lives. So, in response to this question, many people will say, oh, God can't interfere because it's all about free will. We're experiencing the things we are because of the collective free will of the masses. We've chosen this. The world is full of fear, pain, and suffering because of the choices that we've made. It's just the consequences of our behavior. Well, that doesn't ring true with me anymore. It did chime for a while. But think about this by way of a useful analogy. Imagine you're walking down the street and you see a couple with a small child, an infant, and They're both beating that child, beating the child savagely around the head, wrapping a stick around the child's legs, beating the child to the ground, kicking the child, mercilessly, violently attacking the child. You have the opportunity to intervene. Someone might make the argument that the child didn't ask you to intervene. The parents certainly didn't ask you to intervene. But was it right for you to intervene? Was it the morally correct decision? Or would you have been more justified in just walking along on your side of the street and saying, nothing to do with me, mate. I'm not getting involved. Start whistling and turn the corner? Which of those actions would most people, psychopaths aside, agree would have been the correct course of action? I think if we're honest, most of us would contend that to intervene and to prevent those parents from attacking the child would have been the correct and moral choice of action. Because we're not supposed to stand by and witness suffering when we've got the opportunity to do something about it. That's why we have consciences. And where do our consciences come from? That would have to be original creation source, right? How else to explain why we've got them? Where did the demiurge or the demonic entity that created this realm, if we accept that's what happened, call it Yahweh, if you will, call it Satan, where did that entity emanate from? Well, all roads lead back to original creation source. They have to. Otherwise, none of this would exist. So, taking that analogy, that metaphor, and applying it to a cosmic scenario, if the original God of creation is good, is benevolent, is love, how can he/it have stood aside and allowed, metaphorically, us infants to be beaten mercilessly, whoever the beating comes from? The original creative source will be aware of all the suffering that goes on, of the fact that this place was set up to bring it all about and facilitate it, and yet it's done nothing, when clearly the morally correct, right course of action would have been to intervene and shut it down. Never mind free will choices, because the parents of that child that are beating it could have said, it's our free will. We choose to beat our child. Fuck off. The child might even have said, it's my free will for you not to intervene. I don't want this. But still, would it be right to back off, even in spite of those people saying that? Or is the only correct course of action to stop the suffering, if you are able to? So, if God would like to stop all the suffering that's going on in this place that's been created, usurped, you might say, but he or it can't, then can God really be considered good or great? If God could intervene and stop the suffering, but chooses not to, again, can God really be considered good or great? Neither of those scenarios present a loving, benevolent being with love at the core of everything to me. So there's a talking point for people to wrap their heads around. Most of the rest of this video is going to consist of feedback, of correspondence from other people. Just want to mention I've got a conversation in the diary with David Icke for a couple of weeks' time, later in February. So he's someone whose work I've followed for many, many years. He basically got me started in the game. And in the early days, it was his conspiracy research which sparked that kind of interest in me. So the fine detail of how this world operates, the groups and the networks and the secret societies that run it, the apparatus, the mechanisms that they use, the tactics, the occult symbolism that they place everywhere, the way that they've controlled every aspect of organized society to make sure they've got the whole of humanity locked down. So I've been very interested in the detail of all that stuff, the nuts and bolts of it, for most of my speaking career and writing career. But in recent times, I've become much more interested in the ultimate question, which lies in wait for you at the end of the road if you're going to go all the way. And I'm very happy that David Icke addresses all this stuff, and he seems to be at that point himself where he's spending a lot of time talking and reflecting on this. And that is, what is the true nature of this realm? What created it, and to what end? Why is there so much suffering? Why does it never stop? So I'll be putting these questions to him, and specifically in that conversation, it may be the first question I ask, but I'll certainly be leaving enough time for him to give a full answer to it. That question of why would a loving creator, if benevolent, if it has our best interests at heart, have allowed this usurping to have taken place, the hijacking of this realm, or the creation of it in the first place? Why hasn't it intervened? Never mind all this new age stuff about free will and, this stuff can only come in if you ask for it and you got to manifest it. Not buying any of that stuff anymore. Doesn't ring true to me. So I will be getting into a couple of bits of correspondence, but first off, just keeping things topical and conspiratorial, I guess. In the last few days, you may have noticed, there have been these bizarre incidents involving airliners, aircraft, coming down in the United States. Now, this all smacks, of course, of it being yet another PSYOP, military grade, for social engineering purposes, and fulfilling probably some sort of occult ritual observations. But somebody wrote in with an observation of their own. And for me, this further reinforces the notion that the true nature of this realm, at the core of it all, it consists of computer style coding. So you can call it a simulation, AI, virtual reality, matrix, all these terms. And we have technology now which enables us to have really good metaphors for what I feel is going on at the very base core of this reality. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I see it as a kind of AI construct which is left to run itself because it's been coded like a computer game, like a piece of software. So it's not even necessary for entities to be presiding over it 24/7 and pulling strings to make sure certain things happen. These things happen because the coding sees to it. It automatically arranges itself in certain patterns and clusters to cause certain things to play out in apparent physical manifestation. So that idea explains very well why we get things like amazing coincidences and synchronicities, synchromysticism, numbers and dates and people and scenarios, situations that all seem to coincide with each other. And if you imagine that it's all happening randomly and it could be any old way at all and it just happens to have played out in this way, you're usually faced with odds of several billion to one of it being just down to mathematical random chance. So, what are the odds of two plane crashes occurring within 48 hours and 135 miles of each other when we were faced with, on Wednesday, 29th of January, Reagan National Airport, Washington, D.C., capital city of the United States. Then 2 days later, Friday, 31st of January, an incident at Roosevelt Avenue, the Mall area in Philadelphia, the fifth largest city in the US. Both crashes occurred at sites named after presidents who both survived assassination attempts and whose names both begin with R. And then you can add to that that both crash sites were named after Republican presidents, there's another R, who both survived assassination attempts. Theodore Roosevelt Boulevard, Philadelphia, and Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington. So some people may make the argument that this is the result of human planning, and that a bunch of people in one of these secret societies or these social engineering think tanks sat around a table and said, yeah, we'll target this place, and we'll do it because of these presidents, and we'll do it because both of them survived assassination attempts and their names begin with R. Yes, it could have been the result of human planning, but I think it's far more likely that this stuff just occurred by itself, because we see it all the time with apparent coincidences. And many of us have these synchronicities in our own lives, if we're honest. We could be thinking of a particular person or an event or a place, and then we'll see some representation of it on a computer screen or on a lorry that's driving by or on a song that just starts playing on the radio. Happens to me several times every day. And that's just what I'm consciously aware of, what I'm paying attention to. Don't know how many times it happens when my conscious mind is not engaged. So I think these are events which further cement the idea that this is a computer coding style matrix, digital, holographic in nature, but anything but the organic creation that we've been entrained to think of it as, and certainly not here for us to learn life lessons and grow and evolve in some way. It's not about teaching us. It's about containing us and causing us pain and trauma and suffering, so that the energy that we emanate as a direct result of that presumably goes somewhere and is used for some nefarious purpose by whatever force put this place into being. So this video should not be viewed in isolation. It follows on, as I say, from the previous 13. And I think with each one I do, I'm building on previous ideas. And all of this information should be seen as a tapestry. And I'm very happy to see that there are many other speakers, YouTubers, authors, filmmakers, scholars who are putting out information of this nature in these times, because we need it. We need it if we're going to ultimately make sense of what the hell this place is, how we got here, and most importantly of all, how we transcend it, how we leave, if we have no desire to ever come back here. That is about as attractive to me a prospect as being skewered alive over a hot fire and forced to listen to Ed Sheeran albums for 12 days straight. Total nightmare. All right, so I want to share now some dream symbolism. So this is from a friend of mine, and I've had this sort of conversation with a few people recently, actually, where so many of them seem to be having dreams of this nature. Obviously, dreams are highly symbolic, and they may well be there to teach us something, because it's happening in the subconscious mind, which absorbs so much information during the course of our lifetimes. But it's interesting that so many people are having dreams of this nature, it seems, in these times. And it all ties in to these ideas of the reincarnation soul trap, if you want to call it that, the tunnel of white light, which near-death experiences undergo, it seems, when they leave their bodies and go into the astral realm. So I'm just going to read out this dream, and I think it tells us so much. In the dream, I'm walking up a long, wide staircase with many other people climbing up in a queue. From a distance, on the top of the stairs, there's a landing. I can see a door opening on the right, and a figure standing on the left, away from the door, in the corner, seemingly observing the crowd. Everyone is in a queue, going towards that door opening. There is no physical door, but an energetic field of some sorts, like a vibrational curtain. I can now see people going in one by one, and it's not possible to see them any longer once they're through. I suddenly become aware of how strong the pull is to go into the opening. It feels like a magnetic pull to your heart center, and it's hard to describe how strong the temptation feels to go towards the door, and it gets ever stronger while ascending the steps. Then, at one moment, I stop and look up. I now clearly see the figure on the left of the landing, observing everyone. I keep looking at him. Something feels off. He's not moving. He spots me looking at him. His face is a big grin that makes me very uncomfortable, like a Cheshire cat or Joker, jester type of figure. I then turn towards the people climbing up in front of me and behind me. I ask them about the figure on the top left, but no one answers me. Some respond saying, "There's no one there." No one seems to see him but me. Something shifts within me. I realize that it's not right to enter the doorway and that it's a trap. The magnetism and the pull towards the opening is still incredibly strong, but I don't react on it, and I firmly step out of the queue and walk away towards the left of the wide staircase where no one else is standing, midway the staircase. I start warning people that there's an evil entity on top and that the doorway is a trap and not to go in and turn back. No one listens. Most ignore me, climbing up with their heads down. A few get annoyed and upset with me. They don't like me warning them. And they say we should all go through the door as paradise is there. Not the word they use, but they mean this. The figure on the top left stares at me with an even more awful grin, his attention now firmly on me. And then he's gone. I turn and walk away. In that moment, I feel an empowerment, strength, and confidence that is hard to describe. In spite of the extreme pull that everyone else succumbs to, I manage to get away and see through the deception. The lightness that comes over me feels like the heaviest luggage being lifted. Then my surroundings change and I'm away from the staircase, and everything feels light in a weight sense and out of the dream. I felt so empowered for many days after this dream, and still, when I think about it, I know it has a very deep meaning and is a part of me personally. That there was also this strong feeling that the figure was there to make sure everyone was going in, and the awfully seductive, pleasurable, magnetic pull towards the entrance, no better words for it, was there to make sure everyone went in. A feeling like it is something beyond beautiful that you're going towards, a very seductive pull, but that there was nothing this figure could do when I worked it out and did not go in. It did not feel like a dream at all. And I wonder if that person's perspectives were coloured by the old Convid debacle that we've all been through in recent times, because we saw a lot there, didn't we, of the masses, the vast majority, allowing themselves to be coerced and manipulated by deception and lies through very persuasive, charismatic figures. And those who were in the minority and stood in their sovereignty and their power and said, no, no, I don't care if everyone else is behaving this way, I'm doing what I feel is right, got turned upon by the mob, by the masses, and got demonized and insulted and all the rest of it. Seems to be some elements of that in what went on in that dream. Okay, so a couple of other emails that I'll read out here that people have written in with in response to previous videos. I was raised Christian, and in my younger days, my heart was open and my optimism high. I could find the silver lining and God's purpose in any circumstance I found myself in. As the years have progressed and I reflect back, my life has been nothing but a series of endless tragedies that have broken my heart over and over. I entertained New Age for a time, but the idea that I chose this for myself never resonated. I never would have chosen this for myself or for the children I so naively brought into this realm. Isn't that a societal pressure that so many of us succumb to? The programming that you must procreate because it's just what you do with these lives, don't you know? I want to believe in an all knowing, all powerful, all benevolent God, but if he were all knowing, he would know the extent of suffering. And if he were all powerful, he would have had the ability to intervene. And if he were all good, how could he not have done by now? I mean, how much worse does it have to get? To add to the confusion, I can't deny the supernatural aid that I've felt at some points in my life. A bit of financial relief just at the right moment, a bit of hope, special people who've crossed my path at just the right moment, who've changed me and helped me heal. Many feel like soul family. Also synchronicities that align at just the right moment. So that's a bit of a conundrum. Maybe these things are set into place. Maybe they're part of the coding of this matrix reality to simply keep us moving on. Because if we didn't have any hope or any tiny little pockets of joy, then many of us would just feel that there's no point in existing here. And we might feel far more inclined to take ourselves out of it. So maybe there's a little carrots on sticks that get dangled just to keep us trucking on, knowing that we're still going to, for the most part, be undergoing all the pain and the hardship that we always do, but we'll have the odd little enjoyable experience here and there, just to make us feel like this isn't total hell. So I've discussed this one before. If this place was fire and brimstone and it was just obvious what it is, a hell world, then we'd know what we're up against. This is why the so-called elites wage war on populations through things like social engineering and cultural subversion, because then it's not blatantly obvious that we're being targeted and that we're at war. If a tank rolls down the street, if there's planes dropping missiles out of the sky, you know you're at war. You know you've got an enemy. You know they're trying to kill you. But if it's done through cultural Marxism and the sort of subversion of nations that the KGB whistleblower Yuri Bezmenov spoke about, then most people don't notice because it just creeps up on them like a mugger in a dark alley. So their lives are being changed for the worst, but it's happening in a very sly, coercive, hidden way. And maybe that's what we're looking at cosmically with this place. That's why these little pockets of joy here and there are allowed to take place. So a couple of brief ones to round off with. Somebody said, I'm not in love with the idea of learning through suffering. It feels like a justification for suffering and pain, like it's indispensable or welcome. Also, if consciousness is everything and all-knowing, why does it need to learn and improve? It already knows itself, right? It already knows what experiences feel like. It knows what regret feels like. It knows what grief feels like. It knows what physical pain feels like. So why does it need to undergo these things through these endless expressions of consciousness, these endless individuated units of itself to experience the same emotion and the same experience over and over and over again? I've mentioned this one before. Just think about an animal that goes to an abattoir to be killed. I mean, this happens by the billions every single day around the world. So if someone's going to say, well, consciousness or the Godhead just wanted to know what that experience feels like, why, after the first experience, or even 10 or even 100 expressions of the same experience, does it not go, okay, got it, learned the lesson, I know what that feels like, I don't need to go through it anymore? But no, the same process gets repeated over and over and over again to the tune of not just billions, not just trillions, but whatever lies beyond those figures. And it never, ever ends. If consciousness is all knowing, and if it has an ounce of intelligence, an IQ level below that of a school dunce, then it ought to be learning from all these experiences and saying, okay, I don't need to do this anymore. Last one I'll read out about the only real reason I can think of for wanting to stick around in this world for as long as possible is simply to gain as many potential answers to the question of what happens when we leave it as we can. Yeah, I resonate with that one. Not many reasons for wanting to be around in this place, but gaining as much knowledge and spiritual wisdom as we can arm ourselves with so that we can be in the best possible position to navigate whatever lies beyond and make the very best decisions for where our consciousness goes beyond this place is about the best reason I can think of as well. So that's it for this one. As ever, feedback and comments are welcome. You can drop comments in the video section on whatever platform you're watching this on. Of course, the God Talks YouTube channel is my main portal for all this stuff. So if you just want this and you don't want it all mixed up with my music industry research and all my other podcasts and stuff like that, then just stick with the Mark Devlin God Talks video on YouTube. I'm posting this, of course, also to BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble, so you might be watching it on one of those, and the audio is going up on Spreaker. Just to mention that my new book, No One's Dad's a Plumber, which is the fourth book in the Musical Truth series, is going to be out very soon. I'm aiming for the spring equinox, 22nd of March, for this to be launched. I've got a speaking weekend of events in Scotland lined up to kick this book off. So I'll be taking it out on the road, out and about in England and beyond for the rest of the year. But I've chosen Scotland because I love Scotland to be the location for the very first talks that I'll do, presenting information from this book for the first time. So I'm going to be in Helensburgh, just outside Glasgow, on Friday, 21st of March, then in Edinburgh on Saturday, 22nd of March. Still waiting for the final confirmation of the venue on that, but it won't be long now, so keep an eye on the links below. And then on Sunday, the 23rd, in the afternoon, I'm going to be at Clark's on Lindsay Street in Dundee. So there's links to where you can get tickets to all these events in the notes below, along with all the rest of it. My email address is down there. And also there's a link to my main hub website, which is markdevlin.com. Details of all my upcoming events on there, and also my podcasts, videos, and everything else that I get into. So I hope people have found something thought-provoking and of genuine spiritual value with this particular video. Won't be too long till I put out the next one. Never really is. And all that feedback is welcome. So thanks for listening as we continue to work out together and help each other find the answers as to what is this place and how do we get out and never, ever return. Cheers.